listening to the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN. Here is Femi Abebefe.
Welcome to another edition of the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN. I'm your host, Femi Abebefe. As always, make sure to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. Our producer, Elliot Bowman, with us on the ones and twos. Michael, this is our first Overreaction Monday after a full weekend of football preseason. Week number 1 is in the books. How you feeling? Overall thoughts, man. Now we get to do the overreaction muscle once again, man. We're back officially.
There's only one guy on this podcast who's going to overreact. That's the four film Femi. For people at home that don't realize, Femi and I spent the weekend together on the Lombardi line, and Femi was complaining that he wasn't able to put the 4 games in his quad box to watch 4 games at one time. Now,
I want a quad box feature.
I've been around a lot of incredible football minds in my life, and I've yet to find anybody who could watch 4 games at one time until I met the great Femi. And so I applaud you. I'm in all of you that you can do 4 games at one time. It's just remarkable. But the only person on this pod who will overreact is the 4-game Femi.
Well, I appreciate your applause. You know, I mean, I try to impress here on the podcast, so I'm glad to go ahead and do that. I just want myself a nice little quad box feature. We got into it on Saturday about that. I like to live wager, and I like to kind of take all things in. And also, too, like, all 4 games are not simultaneously like the plays at all times. It's like you get commercials in some of them. You get like there's all lull times and all that, so you can kind of bounce around.
You're like John Nash. You're like John Nash when he walked into that, the room with all those numbers on the board, and you just get your maps out and you start figuring out how to break the code. I mean, I think we're wasting you here at VSiN. I think you should really go back to Princeton and start breaking codes. I mean, we could use you. There's no question. When you can watch 4 games at one time, now you and Will Hill can do it, but Will Hill also a contributor to VSiN. You take your game to a whole other level. I mean, it's just remarkable. I'm in all of it. I really am.
You got to. I told you, man, once the regular season starts, I got to kind of get the muscles back and going, man. We got to get back in shape for watching all sorts of football all at the same time. So we got to go through. It's preseason for everyone. So it's preseason for me as well to watch as many games as possible.
Of course. Well, yesterday on Sunday, unfortunately for 4-game Femi, you could only watch 1 game at a time.
Yeah.
Now, you were bored. I'm sure you were probably watching baseball and European soccer, too, to go along with it.
Well, I watched my European soccer before the football started. It was nice that they kind of had it like that. Obviously, they're overseas. They're ahead of us. So the soccer was over. The baseball was on the TV that was on mute. The football was on the volume TV. And the football had on yesterday afternoon 49ers, Raiders here in Las Vegas. And how about your guy Trey Lance? 10 of 15, 112, and a touchdown. But that probably tells about 1.5% of the story of what actually happened on the field because
he had
watching
111 quarterback rating. He had 111 quarterback rating.
But he was sacked 4 times.
How could you argue with that? I'm surprised there hasn't been more money wagered on him to be the MVP. Remember, his MVP odds at most of the local – his MVP odds, I'm going to repeat that. Mm-hmm. His MVP odds were less than some – he was 25-1 at one point this offseason. I think it was in May. We have people in our network that were promoting him to be MVP. We still do. Look, I said this on the Lombardi line on Sunday. It's not going to happen, right? Mm-hmm. It's not going to happen. He's not going to be the backup quarterback. I don't know what they're going to do with him. He's going to be the 3rd. But the answer to the problems that he hasn't played, I feel badly for the kid because it's just not comfortable for him playing quarterback. His arm and his feet aren't tied together. His processing is very hard. First play of the game, he wants to throw the out. The corner's squatting on it. So he doesn't really, the corner has squatted with inside technique to start the formation. And he looks there, can't see it, and then he bangs back. Most quarterbacks would have looked at that and said, okay, probably not a real good idea to throw this check into something else. Part of a quarterback's job isn't to always just call the play that's in the huddle. It's to get you out of a bad play. And as you go down this road with Lance, it just becomes harder and harder and harder. And you could show all the clips of him moving and all that stuff. At the end of the day, when his mama lifted him from the crib, he just didn't have that quarterback instinct. And no matter how much you want to massage it or make excuses, and certainly with your lawyer cap, Barrister Femi, you can make a lot of excuses for anyone. There's just no chance. So I said this yesterday. I'll stand by it. He is not going to be the backup quarterback. I don't know what they're going to do with him, but there's no chance. There is no chance based on the evidence that I've seen and based on what I've heard.
Because right now the narrative is that he is competing for this backup job with Sam Darnold. If it started out as Trey Lance is competing for the starting job, now it's competing for the backup job, when in reality, Michael, I asked you this before we ended the Lombardi line yesterday on VSiN. I think that he might be competing to stay on the 53-man roster. Like, is that where we're at with Trey Lance right now? Like, are these reps looking for him to be able to say, can he stay on this roster and be a viable 49er?
Well, I think you got to look at this, right? Like, you know that once you reach a conclusion on a player, okay, once you really have a handle on who the player is, then you've got to make some decisions. And Trey Lance is, they're not going to pick up his option, correct? Mm-hmm. All right? They're not going to pick up his option. And there's too much dead money to cut him. They would take a $10 million cap hit if they cut him. So they're not going to do that, right? They're just not going to do that. So you've got to understand that, he's on the team and nobody is going to take his guarantees with him. He's got $8 million left of guaranteed money. He's got 3.76 this year, and he's got 5.3 this year. Plus, he's got a roster bonus of $2.8 million this year. So basically, he's got $5 million guaranteed to him this year. Mm-hmm. Next year, he's got another $5 million guaranteed to him, and he's got a roster bonus at 4.2, so he could technically have $9 million. There's really no way out on this. There's no PR maneuver that John Lynch has, no matter how much he wants to positively talk about it, right? There's no way out of this. He's going to be the third string, and that's what it's going to be, and they're going to hope that maybe it'll click at some time between now and then. But where else are they going to go? They can't use his money to satisfy Bosa because they lose cap room by doing so.
It really, and this could have honestly been a disaster situation. Now, lucky for the 49ers, they've been able to get out of this with being able to find Purdy. Now, I still have questions about Purdy and what he can do in the future, but he had a really good end of the season his rookie year there, and they were able to still go to the NFC title game. But this could have been an absolute disaster. When you factor in the resources that they gave up, we always talk about economics here on this podcast and supply and demand. What about opportunity cost? Like the opportunity cost that was given up to go ahead and invest into this guy, what you could have done with all those picks that you used to move up to number 3 and draft him. Like that, to me, most franchises don't recover from that, but it seems like the Niners, credit to the coaching staff, credit to their scouting staff of finding Brock Purdy and all that stuff.
Credit to Kyle Shanahan.
Yeah.
Credit to Kyle Shanahan. Credit to him. I mean, look, I reported this. I think Christopher Sims and I were the only two people that were singing this tune, right? Kyle was in Cabo. He was watching tape. He fell in love with Mac Jones. He felt like, look, we got to get in front of New England. They're going to want to get this guy. They traded up. And all the narrative out there was, there's no way you should trade up for Mac Jones, which it essentially, since in 3 years, proves to be correct. Mm-hmm. So you have to be trading up for Trey Lance. There was no love for Justin Fields in this situation. There was none. I know that you find that hard to believe.
No,
we'll get to him later.
I remember that draft
no
process.
Love for that.
Yeah, everyone was wrong about him.
Right. And so Adam Peters, the assistant GM, and John Lynch, they convinced, they wore down, they just kept on Kyle and on him that they had to go for Lance. Because remember, the rhetoric at the time was that Kyle's offense could get stale and they needed somebody else to enhance the offense. They needed someone else athletically to enhance the offense. That was the narrative, okay? And so that's why, and it wasn't until draft day. Now, Jimmy Sexton represents Trey Lance and Mac Jones. He did not know where they were going. All through the process, I think he believed that it was going to be Mac, but he wasn't sure. They weren't saying. And I think Kyle ultimately, and I think it's been proven correct, that he got talked out of it. Now, how they solve this moving forward, I don't know. Yeah. Brock Purdy, I'm with you, Femi. You're going to need 20 games before you stamp this. You're going to need 20 games. Why 20? Because 20 games is a full season and another month. And what happens oftentimes to quarterbacks is once they declare who they are, through 20 games. The defense reacts to who they are, and they change how they play them and what they do, especially the good defensive coordinators.
Yeah.
So where will Purdy end up? I don't know. But right now, Darnold wasn't no great flash in the game either. But at least I think Darnold, when he gets the reps with the better players, will show that he at least can manipulate and move the offense and not have it stagnant.
Yeah, I am curious to see if Sam Darnold can get what they do in week 2 of the preseason, if they start Sam Darnold and give him some of those reps, or maybe Brock Purdy plays because he didn't play yesterday in that game. So obviously recovering from the elbow surgery and all that, should be good to go for week 1. But I'm curious to see if he can kind of get into the reps as well. But I would like to see Sam Darnold run with some of those ones and see what that looks like. I'm sure Kyle Shanahan would like to see what that looks like. They've seen it in practice, but I'd want to see it in a game setting as well. But to me, I just... With Peters and Lynch doing this thing with Trey Lance, and obviously hindsight is 2020 now that we have some evidence. We don't have a full sample of evidence, but there's some evidence, at least for the viewing public. They have more privately because they see him at practice every day. But
there's enough evidence, Femi. There's enough evidence.
I mean, he didn't look...
Last year, let's go back.
I mean,
last year, he goes to Houston. They try to dress him up against Houston, and they wanted to get rid of Garoppolo. And on the plane ride home, they realized they can't live with Lance. So they re-sign Garoppolo. They do a Maricopa, and they bring Garoppolo back. So they know. Now, there's people on Twitter that won't give this up, right? There's people on Twitter that won't give. There's enough data. There's plenty of data. And you say, well, he doesn't play in a lot of games. No, there's plenty of data. The best quarterback on the field yesterday was Aidan O'Connell.
Oh, I want to get to him. But you scoffed that he hasn't played in many games. Like, that is a big deal. Like, he hasn't played in games.
But they watch him practice, Femi. You could see him. I mean, one thing you can tell is most every throw they tried to give him was a throw to get him confidence so that he could get himself going. And he wouldn't pull the pin on it. And then when he has to pull the pin, the touchdown pass was an interception. Come on.
There was another dropped interception on the 2-minute drill as well there at the end of the first half. That I think it was I forgot the linebacker who dropped it. I mean, it's a linebacker, so I guess he can't catch them all. But
kid from Florida, yeah.
Yeah, but I want to talk more about this. We're obviously going to get to Justin Fields, our favorite player here on the podcast. We'll get to the rookie quarterbacks and everything else that we saw over the weekend. But we're going to take a quick break, though. This is the GM Shuffle presented by DraftKings and VSiN.
You're listening to the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN. Here is Femi Abebefe.
So Trey Lance clearly struggled, to say the least, in yesterday's game there, despite what the box score says. Like, just watching the game, I think anybody who has objective eyes would tell you that it did not look good. Do you think, Michael, that a change of scenery would do well for Trey Lance, that he needs to get out of this Niner scenery because there's just too much going on, and he's not going to be ready enough to play on this team that is, quite frankly, ready to go and win a Super Bowl? Like, would you think a change of scenery would help out Lance, or is he sort of a lost cause at the quarterback position?
They say past performance predicts future achievement. So here's a kid from Minneapolis, Minnesota, that the University of Minnesota wanted to play another position. It's a little bit like Trubisky, right? The Ohio State University didn't want to play Trubisky at quarterback, even though he was Mr. Ohio. So he went to North Carolina to play quarterback, and he didn't play for 3 years, and he played 1 year, and he became the first round pick. So the problem, Femi, with the logic that you use, yes, a change of scenery might help. The expectations are so high, but who's going to assume the debt? Who's going to assume the contract? Who's going to assume the liability and the guarantees? No one. Nobody wants to take a bad player and guarantee him. And right now, Trey is not a good player for whatever reason. And, what other place could he play well in? I can't imagine, because the one thing we do know about Kyle Shanahan, when he gets somebody who's instinctive, who understands rhythm, who can process, like Brock Purdy, like Jimmy Garoppolo, he's really good. When he gets somebody that can't do that, whether it's Nick Mullen, whether it's C.J. Beathard, whether it's Brian Hoyer, it becomes a little bit more of a struggle. I mean, look at the one-loss record with Jimmy and without Jimmy. It isn't until they got Purdy that it was. Kyle's really good with quarterbacks, but the quarterback has to bring something to the table, right? Like, he has to bring instincts, anticipation, those things to the table. He can't make chicken salad out of chicken shit. He's got to be able to have something. I was told that he loved Aidan O'Connell coming out in the draft. That makes sense. Aidan O'Connell kind of fits Kyle perfectly. Smart, 33 starts in college football, can process, gets rid of the ball. Okay. But they didn't draft him, obviously, because they got Purdy, they got all these quarterbacks they got to deal with.
Instincts, the word that you use there, I think, is the big thing when I watch Trey Lance. It doesn't look like there's any instincts there. Like, it almost feels like he's having to overly think about, okay, I got to hit this, I got to get to this, I got to do this. Whereas, like, most quarterbacks you see, it's natural to where you can kind of work through your progressions. Lance, it feels like he's like, it's almost, and I said this to myself yesterday, he looks like he's somebody who's dressing up to play quarterback on Halloween. Like that's what it looks like, It's like, and I don't mean to kind of like dump on the kid or anything like that, but it's it just doesn't look natural to him.
It's an evaluation, right? So here's the reality of Trey Lance. It's a little bit like Trubisky. If it goes the way they practiced it, right? If it goes the way they practiced it, like in 2 minutes, he threw an inside route. He threw a clear dig, right? And I'm sure that was the first call in 2 minutes, and it went and he banged it in there. Then it's fine. Then it looks good. But if it's not how it practiced, the hitch out to the corner, right? The Y option here. If it's covered and dirty when it's not how it's practiced, then it breaks down. Like he completed a pass on the second down play. He wanted to throw a 7 route deeper, and he threw the check down over here. Well, that's the process in practice. Boom, boom. So when it doesn't go like he practiced it, he breaks down. A lot of guys are like this. That's why you got to create practice like game. And so, I don't know if there is. Whereas O'Connell, you could watch him and he processed the game better, boom, boom. I mean, he throws an inside route. He had a touchdown on one play that he kind of didn't throw. The guy was streaking down the field. He threw an inside over route. But, for the most part, he had really good feel for what he was doing. He had command and he had instincts.
Last note here on Trey Lance, since you brought it up in the last segment there, at our show sponsor DraftKings, he is 50-1 to win MVP. So that's an updated MVP odds.
Went down. It was 25.
It went down a little bit, yeah. So might need to add a couple more zeros.
I'm sure the guys on. I'm sure we'll get some of his fan base, the people that really believe that he should be the MVP. I mean, look, we have people that still think he could win MVP as of this summer.
Do you know the other quarterbacks who are 50-1? You have Daniel Jones, Derek Carr, Brock Purdy, Trey Lance's teammate, current QB1 for the 49ers, Kirk Cousins, and Kenny Pickett. Those are the other quarterbacks at around 50-1.
What does that tell you? They got money on. There's idiots that have bet Trey Lance to be MVP. That's what it tells you. He should be 1,000-1.
Honestly.
But they can't go to 1,000-1 because they got liability on them.
Yeah. If I was a sports book, obviously they're not going to run their business this way because they have bosses to answer to, but make them 1,000-1. You'll probably get people to bet it. That could be free money for you guys. It's like,
well, it's all free money. Yeah. It's all free money. It's a St. Jude's play. Just if you're doing it, just give the money to St. Jude's. Those kids need our help.
You mentioned Aidan O'Connell for the Las Vegas Raiders. I was tweeting about Aidan O'Connell. I didn't tweet about Lance because I wanted to give my thoughts here on the pod. But
Twitter Femi, I love Twitter Femi when he gets going.
Twitter Femi had the evaluations going on O'Connell.
A lot of Twitter Femi during that Chicago game. Oh. Yeah, a lot of Twitter Femi during that Chicago game. We'll get to that.
We'll get to that. I first tweeted Aidan O'Connell and the eyeball emojis. He's catching my eye here. And then after the first half, it's like, you now have my attention, Aidan O'Connell. And we'd kind of been hearing things through Raiders training camp. I'd been reading up on him just to what if this Jimmy thing doesn't work out with the medical? What is the solution for the Raiders? Now Jimmy worked out. He's going to be the starter. But in reading and researching on O'Connell, it sounded like he was playing really well throughout the OTAs and mini camp and early in training camp. And it came to fruition yesterday. They might have found something. I don't see superstar. I'm not going to go that far and heap those expectations on him. But there's no reason why he can't be a starting level quarterback in the NFL. I was impressed in yesterday's start, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Well, his QBR, his rating was 117.8. Lance was 111. Mm-hmm. You would say that was probably really close, right? Yeah, sure it was. I think O'Connell was good. I'm not going to overreact to that. I thought their execution offensively was really the story of the game. Their offensive line, against Kinlaw was in there at times. They had the Farrell, the kid that the Raiders picked 4th overall. He was playing out there. I thought their offensive line was the story. I thought they They ran the ball effectively. I thought their execution really was the tale of the story. I mean, Zaire White, he averaged 3 yards a carry. I would have liked to seen him break more tackles. I would have liked to seen him run with more of more after contact. But he hit the hole. He ran hard, and their execution was really good. Look, O'Connell throws 3 incomplete passes, and one of them was the kid Tucker had an opportunity to make a catch, and the ball hit the ground, and another was a drop. They only had 5 incomplete passes in the game. And that, to me, is what you're looking for. You're looking for your execution, right? You're looking for, they averaged 3-4 a carry. They only had a long run of 14. So but they were really good. They were physical up front. I think it's something to build off for the Raiders. And their defense played at a much higher level than any time I saw them play last year, which was really encouraging. So now they were benefited by the fact that, they were that the quarterback didn't play very well. Had another quarterback been in there. But what you take from the game is, look, Raiders are in the red zone 4 times. They get 4 touchdowns.
Yeah. No, it was really well executed. I thought O'Connell was in command. I think that's more so than anything that I like to see in the preseason from these quarterbacks. Like, do they feel comfortable? Do they look like they're in command? The game didn't seem like it was too fast for him. It didn't seem like it was too big for him. And we know with the injury history of Jimmy Garoppolo, like, we obviously hope he can stay healthy, but he hasn't proven to be able to stay healthy over long periods of times. They might need O'Connell this regular season. And if he has to be thrown in there, I don't think it's going to be too big for him. Like we didn't see him running with Devontae Adams wasn't out there, Josh Jacobs wasn't out there, and he was able to move the football. I know like Warner and Bosa, those guys went out there for the Niners, but O'Connell was also working with the twos as well, and he looked pretty darn good doing it. So I think the Raiders.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, it's something to. I mean, if you're the Raiders, you build off of it. But if you're the Raiders, if you're Josh McDaniels, you're sitting there saying, "Look, our execution, we just got to keep doing what we're doing. We're getting good production out of our offensive line. We're getting good production. Our receivers are starting to play well. It looks like it's coming together. Like you could see it start. I'm not saying they're a great team by no means, but you could see the practice conditions are becoming game reality."
We'll get to this more on the other side, but we'll start the conversation now here, Michael. Saturday morning.
Oh, my God.
Saturday morning on the West Coast, Saturday afternoon for you out there in Ocean City. We just finished up doing Lombardi line, and I told you, I said, all right, are you going to watch the Bears-Titans game? You said, no, I got to watch some other games on tape. I'll get to that when I get to it. And I said, okay, I'll text you some updates on what's going on. And all it took was one drive. Justin Fields, DJ Moore, 68 yards to pay dirt. We're off and running in the Midway City, baby. We're off and running. Justin Fields. Now, you're going to want to put some cold water on this because I know that's how you are. I see you smiling. But here we go, man.
I mean, it's a joke.
Here we go.
It's a comedy. You're like that. I mean, you're going to take the bait on that. I mean, seriously. Actually, the throw was shitty. I mean, DJ Moore made a really good catch, and he made a run. I mean, I love the guy that tweeted to me. He said Al Davis would have said the backup equipment manager could have made all those throws. And he's right. Like at some point when you're watching the tape, in preseason particularly, is it the play or the player? Right? You throw a hitch screen out there. You got one read, you throw it. The kid made a great play. Now, you could sit there and say, okay, now you could see DJ Moore is going to make a huge difference. All right, yeah, he's going to help. There's no question.
He's got a playmaker now.
I'll grant that. But I'm not going down that road. You can go down that road all you want. You can go down this 3-pass incredible moment. Just so you understand this too, Justin Fields last year was the second-rated quarterback in preseason with 147 quarterback rating. Only second to Sam Ehlinger.
I'm not saying
I'll just continue to watch.
I'm not saying this is an incredible moment. I'm saying that this is the building block.
How does this manifest itself in that if he was in the pocket and he was reading coverage and he all of a sudden boom, boom, or he was running shotgun and he stayed in the pocket and people were around him and he banged the ball down. Look, I'm not blind. I'm not blind. When he does something that's separate from just throwing a hitch, I'll be the first to admit I was wrong. But until that, I'm not buying this. If you want to go down there, I would love for you to walk into Al Davis's office and say, hey, Mr. Davis, did you see Justin Fields today? Oh, my God, he would have killed you. He would have destroyed you. Even though you can watch 4 games at one time, he still would have destroyed you.
Michael Lombardi will not be impressed with Justin Fields until he's blindfolded, does a pirouette in the pocket, and throws an out route 15 yards down the field. That's when he'll be impressed. Until then, Justin, keep working.
Don't insult my football acumen. Nope, do not do that.
Keep building blocks.
I will admit it.
All right, we'll see if we can get you on the other side here. We're going to talk some more Justin Fields, and we'll get to everybody else and our preseason All-Stars on the GM Shuffle.
You're listening to the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN. Here is Femi Abebefe.
The foundation is being laid for Justin Fields to have a strong third campaign here in the National Football League. And I know we talked about this over the weekend, that the crux of this debate is not going to be settled until we actually get to the regular season games, because we differ in where we think the ceiling is for Justin Fields. You think he's limited from the pocket, and that's going to hamper his ceiling. And I think that he has the potential to be a really good franchise type of quarterback, because I believe he's just scratching the surface on himself as a passer. Obviously, you're not going to get what you want from the preseason, but I think that it's just an encouraging sign now that there is a playmaker there, because we had the debates about it. Like Darnell Mooney was wide receiver one. You know, what's wrong with what's wrong with giving the quarterback a layup? Is that a penalty now? Like, what's wrong with that?
Well, no, but it doesn't help your evaluation of the quarterback. That's the part. No. I mean, what you're doing is you're taking a play that's non-evaluation and making an evaluation. That's what you're doing. Like, there's certain things that are not evaluations. And so when you turn a non-evaluation into an evaluation, you make mistakes, right? You make mistakes. And so I'm not gonna bite on a non-evaluation. A guy throws a hitch, or he scrambles around and he throws a check down and the kid takes it 58 yards. I'm not going to do that. I'll admit when he makes a throw under duress, or he makes something in the pocket, he does something different that he's never shown his ability to do. I'll admit that when he does it. I have no problem. Look, I've made mistakes. We've all made mistakes. Mm-hmm. No one's perfect. I know I can't watch 4 games at one time. However, I'll be the first to tell you, but I'm not taking a non-evaluation play and turning it into an evaluation. I'm just not going to do it. That's for people on Twitter. Who are instant experts, who absolutely know nothing. That's what they can do. And I'm not going to be part of that. I think today's world, it's really important that, because everybody's an instantaneous expert, that someone's got to think differently or explain what's going on. And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm not anti-Justin Fields. Mm-hmm. I didn't love his anticipation in college. I didn't love his accuracy. I didn't love his delivery. I think a lot of teams kind of agreed with that based on how he went further down the draft. But we're all proven wrong. And let's see if he does it. But those 2 plays are they're non-evaluation plays. And if you want to make them that, feel free.
No, I mean, you know me. I've been saying Justin Fields is going to be great before those 2 plays. So this is not me, Johnny come lately, saying that,
but they don't add to your repertoire. They cannot be introduced as evidence in the court of Justin Fields, because they're non-evaluation plays. It's like you telling me a guy was really good at 9-on-7 in run defense. Well, we know it's run. I mean, there's plays a quarterback has to make that are outside of that have a degree of difficulty. That degree of difficulty is 0. Yeah. I mean, if Trey Lance would have made those throws, what would you have said? He's back?
Well, I never said he was here, so we'll see what happens with Trey Lance. But no, we'll move on from Justin Fields. The evidence will come in September, October, November, December, and maybe even January if the Bears are lucky enough. Let's talk about the rookie quarterbacks.
But just for the record, let's just put this out there. Really, the story of the game wasn't the hitch passes. It was the Bears had a lot of their first-team defense on the field with Malik Willis against the Titans, and they took that opening drive and went down the field. Mm-hmm. And that was the best I've seen Malik Willis operate. Now, it wasn't perfect, but that was the best I've seen him do it.
Yeah, no arguments there. Malik Willis, maybe. Is he building on something? Maybe.
All I could say this is, if you're a Bears fan, you better hope the defense, when they get everybody out there, is better than what it looked like when they had some of those guys out there.
Yeah. I mean,
remember, the Bears were 3-0 last preseason.
Well, it's been well documented. We've had concerns about that Bears defense all offseason, and it showed up once again here in August. The number 1 overall pick, Bryce Young, he was taking a lot of hits in the pocket with the Carolina Panthers. Yeah. They get shut out by the New York Jets in their preseason debut, 27-0. Bryce Young, 4 of 6, 21 yards. Didn't light up the scoreboard, but I thought he made a couple nice throws there, working pretty quickly through his progressions. But this offensive line, buddy, this might make me rethink my optimism about the Panthers.
Well, it's early yet, right? They played way better last year than they did in that game, no question. The Jets kicked their ass up front. My question to you is, was Frank Reich watching the game? Like, I'm just telling you, if Al Davis was the owner of the Carolina Panthers, Frank Reich might have got fired today for insubordination. Like, to leave that kid out there and let him get the shit kicked out of him the way he did, to me was, I don't know what he was watching. Like, what game was he watching? Like, why would you do that? Why would you continue to let this kid take a beating? You couldn't protect. You got problems. I truly believe that offensive line will be better. Mm-hmm. He's going to have a hard time convincing you after that game. He had no time to throw the ball. Even one of his completions, he got the shit kicked out of him.
Yeah.
So, like, I'm not willing to, like, at some point you got to watch the game. And at some point, yeah, we want a guy who's tough. But at another point, like, it's not fair. Like, the difference is Trey Lance, 3-step drop, he didn't want to throw it, he got hit, okay? He held the ball, he got hit. Mm-hmm. This was different. He was getting the shit kicked out of him. I mean, that Jet front, they couldn't block Solomon Thomas. They couldn't block those guys. And to me, I have no idea what Frank Reich was doing. Like, it forced me to ask the question, how did he get another job? Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, especially the way things went last year. And Frank Reich's teams traditionally have started slow, even the good teams that he had in Indianapolis. Maybe I don't know if he's not running a good enough training camp or what they're going through in the offseason program, but this is not an encouraging sign for Carolina Panthers backers as well. But kudos to Bryce Young. He did show toughness. I know, like, that was a concern for a lot of people. Not that he's not tough, but could his frame hold up? Now, that's just a few series. We'll see what happens over the course of his 17-game season. But he showed toughness, got back up, and didn't seem to have any issues or look like he was rattled or anything like that. But, yeah, you would hope that your franchise quarterback isn't getting beat up like that, or at least your rookie quarterback's not getting beat up.
If we were doing the awards this time, you got to put Frank Reich on the lam. Like, what are you doing, Frank? Watch the game. Yeah. Like, you got a guy as your franchise quarterback, or you think he is. You got to let him get the shit kicked out of him like that? Don't you, protect him. Mm-hmm. He played quarterback, Femi.
Played quarterback for the Panthers, too, for a season. I believe he was one of their inaugural starters there for Carolina. Anthony Richardson.
If I'm David Tepper, I'm saying to myself, wait a minute. I hired this guy because he's an offensive guru. That's what I wanted. I wanted somebody to coach the quarterback. I don't want a defensive coach. Whoa.
What'd you make of Anthony Richardson?
Now, last year, James Campen was the line coach there last year. He's the line coach there this year. So either I know he's a good coach. I watched that team gain 350 yards against Detroit. They could run the ball on anybody. If this doesn't improve, then it's something going on in practice.
That's what it was kind of the situation in Indianapolis. Like, we saw that offensive line deteriorated, and that was one of the highly regarded offensive lines heading into last season, and they looked pretty bad. So if this is starting to, like, what did it say? Once is an accident, 2 is a trend, 3 is a problem. Like, we're starting to kind of work our way through this stuff here, and it's not looking good for Frank Reich. Anthony Richardson threw the early pick against Buffalo on that first drive there. Settled in really after that and stuff, but he showed some of the arm strength is just going to jump off of the page there. But what else did you make of Richardson's performance in the preseason?
I thought Richardson was not what I was expecting. I thought he's so freaking big, right? Yes. I thought he was going to be a more Lamar Jackson. And really what I saw was he's more Josh Allen. He's more big, physical. He's going to break tackles. He's going to be hard to get on the ground. But he's, even though he runs this incredible 40 time, you didn't see that quickness. I mean, people could run to him. Look, it was early. I thought, he came back off the interception. He's going to make mistakes. I mean, that's what you want in preseason is to make mistakes. He's got to protect the ball. But for me, as a player, I thought, okay, I watched one game. He's going to have to be a little bit like Josh Allen. We're going to have to correct his accuracy. We're going to have to tailor the offense around what he can do. And when he could take off and run, he's going to dish out punishment. Now, you got to protect him because he could easily get hurt. He's so big. I mean, he's Ben Roethlisberger big. Yeah. I mean, he's a physical specimen out there. And so when those guys are that big, they don't have that elite quickness that you want. So he's different. He's different than I kind of visualized him. And I thought the game was kind of what you would expect. Discombobulated, not quite in rhythm. Can he run the six-back offense? Yeah, but he's going to take some hits now. I think they got to be really careful.
So he told reporters early in training camp that he put on 8 to 12 pounds this offseason. So now he's planning to play at 250, played at 240 at Florida. He's going to be around that 250-ish range. Do you think that's an indication about how Shane Steichen plans to use him? Because the six-back offense, you're going to take a lot of hits. Maybe it's going to be running those QB sneaks like we saw Jalen Hurts do, running some of those power runs there from quarterback. Do you think that was him kind of getting prepared to take on a pretty big workload early on in his career?
I just think he feels like that'll help him take more hits. Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. I don't know how much speed. I don't watch practice, but how much speed and elusiveness has he lost with the weight gain? We'll see. But to me, I don't think that his game is going to be Lamar Jackson kind of boop, and then go. Yeah. I think his game is going to be power. And, you got to protect him from himself, really.
Yeah, it's almost Cam Newton-esque. He was like the power back for the Carolina Panthers there, like taking a lot of those hits. And
it is.
It's like maybe it's not good for longevity.
But Cam processed quicker than Anthony does right now.
Yeah.
When he left Auburn, Cam could process. But obviously Cam did. He won the Heisman Trophy.
Yeah, he carried that team to a national title that didn't have much NFL talent on it. That was a hell of a season for Cam Newton out there in Auburn. C.J. Stroud, he was under duress. Didn't look super duper comfortable in the pocket there. We saw him working under center in that Bobby Slovic offense there, but it wasn't the best showing for the Houston Texans. But it's preseason. But that offensive line looked like they were getting their tails kicked by New England.
No, look, first play of the game, he's supposed to throw it out route, and he holds the ball. What does that tell us, right? It tells us that he's not sure what he's seeing, which tells us he's a little bit of a ways. Mm-hmm. He wasn't comfortable. The second, when he throws the interception, he stares down the receiver. He's not, I got to throw the ball to him. Look, I said this from the beginning. The guy's taken no snaps under center. He's called no plays in the huddle. Like, to think that he's just going to instantaneously turn it on and be a really good player is a little far-fetched. So, that was kind of expected. Guys don't want to cut it loose. They don't want to make a mistake, right? Yeah. Like the first play of the game, he's got the out wide open. Just throw it. Like, why don't you just throw it? Well, see, that's when you start to get into issues. Like, okay, just throw the goddamn thing.
Yeah. Especially in the preseason. I want to see guys let it rip. It's like the results of these games matter. I'm not saying to go out
smartly
there and
let it rip.
Yeah, like don't
be
purposely
smart
throw an
when you
interception.
let it rip. Just don't.
Yeah. No, 100%. I think we're speaking the same language. All right, we'll wrap things up on the other side. We still have a lot to get to here on the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi.
You're listening to the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN. Here is Femi Abebefe.
All right, Michael, let's go rapid fire with some other quick takes on what we saw this week in the preseason. Jordan Love and the Packers. Love played a couple series. First one, I thought he missed Musgrave, the rookie tight end, on one of those routes there, but second drive, went down the field, connected with Romeo Doubs for a touchdown. Packers fans a little optimistic after seeing a couple series from their new starting quarterback.
They gave him a lot of easy throws. Again, they weren't really evaluation throws, boots and crosses. I thought he made a really good throw on the touchdown. He took something off of it. Mm-hmm. I think LaFleur did a smart thing. He's trying to get him kind of some confidence, make him feel comfortable. He didn't look out of sorts, and it's something to build off of, right? It's something to build off of. He had the ability to kind of get himself within the rhythm. So it's encouraging. Certainly it's encouraging, but as the game gets faster and harder, they're going to have to speed it up. You could see that they're more back to the Sean McVay boots and crosses and all that stuff than they were when Rodgers was there, because Rodgers did not want to turn his back to the formation. So this is more of the offense I think LaFleur wants to run. They have shifted from the Aaron Rodgers offense, certainly keep elements of it, into more of what Matt LaFleur's offense wants to be with a movement quarterback.
Yeah, it's good for LaFleur. He's their handpicked guy is Jordan Love, so we're going to see his kind of dream scenario come to fruition here. In Tampa Bay, the Buccaneers QB competition, we got another data point there. Baker Mayfield looked better than Kyle Trask. Trask actually turned the ball over, which we'd heard all throughout training camp that it had been Mayfield that was turning the ball over. Mayfield did lead a touchdown drive there as the Bucs lost to the Steelers 27-17.
I think the story was Kenny Pickett in the game, actually. I think he looked really good.
He did look good.
I think the Steeler team is really good. Mayfield averaged 6.1 per completion. I mean, look, if Mayfield doesn't play good in these games, where he's throwing the ball up the field a little bit, how do you really tell? I mean, this is what he did last year for Carolina when he won the job. He didn't throw the ball down the field. I think we'll need another week to really go. I'm not ready to say either guy played good, Femi.
Yeah, but Pickett looked awesome. That Steelers first team offense, George Pickens, if he takes another step, that Mother May I step forward there, he's a really talented player out wide for the Steelers there.
They're not sexy. They're not sexy, so no one loves them, right? Yeah. They're just really, they're old school. It's like the Raider offense. The Raider offense isn't sexy. They run the ball to two backs, two tight ends. They run lead, they run gap schemes. They get to third down, they convert. So sometimes those things aren't as sexy as let's get in spread and try to throw the ball all over the place.
You want to get an 11 personnel, Michael? Do 11 personnel motion?
Yeah, if I can block them, I do. If I can block them, I do. If I can't block them, I can't block the right end or the left end, I'm a little worried.
All you got to do is get an 11 personnel and you score points. That's what I heard.
Like I couldn't block the Jets. Like, when we're going to keep calling passes? Like, seriously.
Getting killed out there. Speaking of which, trying to block, that Denver offensive line was struggling. Our guy, Jonathan Gannon, I don't know what got into him, man. He was sending pressures in the preseason like this was week 9, and he was trying to win a pivotal game there, man. Russell Wilson was under duress that entire time there. They struggled as well offensively before that final TD drive when they exited the game.
I mean, first play of the game was blitz 0. I mean, he just came right after it. Like, it was hilarious. Like, who is this guy?
Yeah, it's a preseason
like, Philly
game.
fans are sitting there saying, why? Now, he would say, well, look, I had good rushers. I didn't need to blitz. Here, I got a blitz. For me, watching that tape, I did not think Russell was very good at all. First play of the game, he got booed. He rolls out. He throws the ball behind. He's not comfortable. I think his eye level is still down. His eye level is still down. And Stidham wasn't much better either. Yeah, I mean, both of their, and they started their offensive line, Femi.
Yeah, I thought their whole offense was bad. And that's why I kind of want to give it a little bit more time, because if it was just Russell that was bad and Stidham looked comfortable, then it's like, okay, this maybe is a really big problem for Russell Wilson. But the whole offense just looked out of sorts. I don't know if it's maybe just adjusting to the new scheme and kind of seeing bullets live for the first time.
Well, I think you got to look at Russell and understand that the problems of last year are still there. Mm-hmm. His eye level's down. He doesn't want to get hit. Let's just be clear here. He does not want to get hit. And you can say, well, what quarterback wants to get hit? Okay, fair enough. But some quarterbacks can see up the field and still take hits. Like, he doesn't want to get hit. And that's a problem for Sean.
Yeah.
It's a real problem for Sean to call in the game. I mean, they tried to make it easy for him. The one pass he makes inside, I think it was to Judy for 20 yards. I mean, he waited for the second window. He actually had some protection. If I'm Sean, I'm worried about this offensive line, because this is where I put my resources. Now, they didn't have McGlinchey, who I don't think is an elite player anyway. But still, Bowles got beat for a sack against a team that we don't think is very good, or I don't think is very good.
The market thinks they're the worst team in football. And I think that offensive line, which you mentioned, they invested in that offensive line. That was the first thing they did in free agency, was McGlinchey, Powers, boom, boom, like those deals, and they look bad. So if it's...
Yeah, they did.
It's not a good sign.
Now, I mean... You said it on the Lombardi line. They were playing at a higher level. There's no question, right? Mm-hmm. They were really playing. I mean, the Cardinals were out there to play. There's no question.
Yeah. Cardinals. It was just funny seeing Gannon send all those pressures. Watson and the Cleveland Browns, they went ahead and lost to the Commanders. We saw Sam Howell make his start, a little bit of Jacoby Brissett as well. DTR, I mean, he's just going to be my QB for the preseason. I love that kid. He's fun to watch. But what did you make of Cleveland, though, and their first team offense? They played their starters there, too.
Well, they did. Their offensive line's good. They went right down the field. I thought Watson looked way more comfortable. I thought they looked good until they got inside the 1 yard line. They couldn't finish the drive. They got stuffed at the goal line. But I was impressed with Cleveland. I think Cleveland, if they could continue to get that out of their quarterback, if he plays like that, when you get Nick Chubb back in there, I think they're going to be a good team. I think it was – look, what you're looking for is execution, right? You're not looking for – as I said in the last pod, you're not looking for individuals' accolades. Oh, this guy's tremendous. Oh, my God. You're looking for execution, and I thought Cleveland's execution offensively and defensively was good. Washington, I was curious to know what offense are they going to run. They're running the Mahomes version of the West Coast, right? Spread, tight end motion, Kelsey, And look, I thought Hal played good. I can't wait to watch more of him. Mm-hmm. I don't think there's any judgment to be made off of the game, but we'll see how it goes. I thought it was a good start for them, just get the stuff out there and see if they can execute. You just want to see execution, really, is what you want to see. Can we catch the ball? Can we not have a lot of incompletions? Can we run the ball, get no yards lost in the run game? That's what you got to be worried about.
Speaking of execution, how about the New Orleans Saints? I mean, it was the starters, it was the backups. It was pretty good execution, especially in that first half.
Yeah, exactly. That's what you want. I mean, that's what you want. And so whereas when Kansas City's offense was on the field, their execution wasn't as good as you expected it to be.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they went a 3-and-out. They didn't get a first down. And so now Kelsey wasn't on the field, so that obviously changes a lot of things. Mahomes was, though. But still, it wasn't what we're used to seeing, which is probably what Andy wants, so he can keep building on it. You know, one thing we lose sight of is if you're perfect the first week, you know, then all of a sudden people think, oh, we got this. No, you need to keep going. I mean, sometimes when you're imperfect, you can make more improvement.
Yeah, it's all about building toward the start of the regular season. Just to give an update on our training camp All-Stars from last Thursday, we had Bryce Young, Trey Lance, and Sean Clifford as our quarterbacks. Clifford, you were impressed when we talked about this Sunday. You liked Clifford in that game against Cincinnati.
I thought he was real. I thought he was really good. I thought he was what you were looking for. Was he perfect? No, he threw 2 picks, but he had great anticipation, way better anticipation than I saw him at Penn State. He had great accuracy. He moved around. I thought he was really impressive. I thought, you know, I was making fun of them picking him in the 5th round. But based on the way he played, he certainly was worth that. I mean, O'Connell was a 4th round, and Clifford was a 5th round, and both those guys played better than any other quarterbacks picked in the 1st round.
Yeah.
They fit within the system. They played. Look, Clifford's going to make mistakes, throw the ball, try to fit the ball in, got it picked off. But, I mean, he looked good. If you pick Clifford early in the draft, I mean, you can't say that he did not execute or look uncomfortable. You kind of wonder, like, why didn't he look like this at Penn State? You know, this is where I tend to make mistakes on quarterback is I tend to think the quarterback's not executing the offense correctly when maybe the offense isn't really good enough.
Yeah, that was Justin Herbert at Oregon. I'm not saying that Clifford's going to be Herbert. I'm not saying that, but was Herbert.
That's where I learned it from.
Yeah.
I learned that from Herbert.
Yeah, I watched a lot of Herbert. I worked in Oregon. I was a Pac-12 fan and all that stuff, and I was like, is this the guy? But he appears to be that guy with the Chargers. The wide receivers, George Pickens, he looked awesome. Ridley, 2 catches, 21 yards. We've been hearing a lot about him all throughout training camp.
He looked good.
He looked good. Yeah, he looked good.
I thought Jacksonville's execution, the first they throw an interception on the first play on a boot, but I thought their execution, they played their guys. You could see their execution was really good. I was impressed with Jacksonville. I really was. I was not impressed with Dallas, not because they didn't do – I mean, their execution wasn't really good. They needed to do that. I thought Deuce Vaughn was really good.
Yeah,
he can make people miss. He's little, but I thought he was really good. And the tight end was good too. But I think, to me, they've got to take it up a notch, their execution.
Before we get out of here, I know the people are curious. Your thoughts on James Harden earlier this morning, and it's a video over from China calling Daryl Morey a liar, and then he says, let me say this again, Daryl Morey is a liar, that he was lied to. What do you make of this Harden Sixer situation?
Well, you know, it's funny. Today's Monday. On our show yesterday, we had this conversation, and I said yesterday that Harden obviously was lied to because Harden took a pay cut, right? Harden took a pay cut so they could bring in PJ Walker and other players.
PJ Tucker.
And he had this PJ Tucker, I'm sorry. Yep. And he had this, you know, and so he was probably told, look, if you take this pay cut, we'll make it up to you in the next year once we redo the option year. You decline the option, we'll fix it, okay? Mm-hmm. The only time players get mad at you like this is over money. If you promise a player something and you don't deliver it, then that's the player's going to get pissed off. So you could say, do you believe Harden in this case? I think the evidence does lend itself to believe Harden. Why else would he have taken a pay cut?
Bingo.
You know, players just don't give away pay cuts.
Yeah.
Right? And now what happened is, partly Harden's fault too, is he went out in the open market and he realized that nobody was willing to pay more than his option. Nobody was willing to pay more than that option. So he had to take that option. So now who's the only guy he's pissed off at? Morey. If Houston would have said $42 million a year for 4 years, he would have been gone. Mm-hmm. But no one did that because Harden's value isn't what people perceive it to be in the league. So Morey's trapped here. He's got he lied to the player. He can deny it, but something happened. And usually the fights between players and management are over money that was promised, not a negotiation.
Morey's mouth was writing checks that his ass didn't want to cash, and it now is in the situation that he's in right now.
I think what happened is the ownership said, we're not paying him that. That's a sneaky suspicion of mine. I think the owner said, no way I'm paying that deal. I'm not giving that guy 4 years. No way.
Commanders owner Josh Harris. That does it for us here on the GM Shuffle podcast. Thank you to DraftKings. Thank you to VSiN. Thank you to Michael. Thank you to our producer, Elliot Bowman. We will see you guys on Thursday. Blue Chips, Red Chips, own lineman coming up later on this week.